Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. In today's video I'm going to be making a knife out of lock washers. The lock washers I'm using are grade 8. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have to strip off the coating that comes with it. So I'm going to be using muriatic acid to do that. As always, use proper PPE if you're doing this because that stuff stinks, and get a nice ventilated area. And here I have baking soda mixed in with the water that I'm going to be using to neutralize the acid. When I bought these lock washers, they had a gold or brass coating that kept them from rusting. Now that I used the muriatic acid, I've taken it off and we have regular steel looking washers. And here I'm just going to dry them off, make sure they're nice and dry so I can use them in my canister. And here's my canister. It's already been pre-prepped and spray painted. If you're new to canisters, it's always good to line the inside with a coating of some kind. Some people use stainless steel. I like to use white spray paint. The spray paint works the same as whiteout. If you ever seen Forged in Fire, you see them put the whiteout in there. The spray paint does the same thing, but I can coat it easier than, moving whiteout inside. So I like to use that to make sure I have a hassle-free release whenever I do release my can. The steel powder I'm using is 1090 with 15 and 20. It's going to give me a nice shiny contrast to the washers that I put in there. It's not really noticeable here, but I always like to leave a gap in my weld, that way the gases can release. Some makers drill a hole after they fully weld their can, but I like to avoid that step by just leaving a gap. And as always, I do my first press from top to bottom, make sure I seal the contents in there well, and then I start forging my can back into a rectangle shape so I can hit it with my squaring dies so I can get pressure on all sides. Once I hit it a couple times with my squaring dies, I like to go back with my flat dies and hit it a couple times. This not only consolidates what's inside the can and helps it weld better, but it also helps release the can. As you can see, whenever I'm working it, it starts bubbling up. That's where the contents inside are releasing from the side of the can. And here I like to rip off the top manually and keep pressing it. I like to press in the corners, that way instead of being a square, it's more like a circle in the inside, or like a cylinder, and that releases all the corners and makes for an easy release afterwards. They don't always come out this easy. Sometimes they make me struggle, but I was lucky with this one and it came out nice and smooth. Now I'm pressing it from the top down to the bottom. I'm trying to get that square shape back into it, that rectangle. But my press still hasn't been fixed, so it's a little wobbly. So I try to avoid stressing it as much as possible. I have ordered the pieces and they are being cut, so hopefully soon I'll have my press back to 100% and we can work on some really cool stuff. But for the meantime, I gotta just wing it, and hopefully I don't break extra stuff that I don't need to break. I recently made these less aggressive drawing dies and they have been a lifesaver. They move steel like it's nobody's business, and at the same time it doesn't really overpress, which is something I'm really happy about. So if you need some drawing dies, I definitely recommend making a pair of these. Here's just a standard. I'm grinding to clean up my billet, and I'm going to cut it up and restack it. The reason why I'm going to restack it instead of just making a knife out of this is because these lock washers are made from, I believe, 1040 or something equivalent, medium mount steel. So I want to put in a hardenable edge, which in this case is going to be 1084. That way our cutting edge is nice and clean all the way around, and we don't have any issues down the line with edge retention. By the way, the steel powder that I use is knife making steel, so that also holds its retention very well, and it works just as good as the 1084 in the core. But the lock washers are going to be the slightly softer steel in this build. Again, these drawn dies are amazing. Definitely recommend you make a pair if you don't have one. And all I'm doing is drawing it out. One thing I did mess up here is I didn't draw it out thin enough. and that became a hassle later in the build when I had to thin it down by grinding it down. Now that my billet is ready, I'm just taking a standard hunting knife template that I have here for a different kind of hunting knife I do, and I'm just gonna modify it a little bit. I'm gonna give it a bit of a drop point, and I'm gonna make the handle a little bit thinner, as well as doing some minor aesthetic differences in the build. A standard knife shape is a standard knife shape. There's not really much you can change about it, but this will give us a different look. And here I'm taking it to my portaband so I can cut off whatever I can cut off on it. I actually abuse this thing way too much and it destroys the blade because of how thick the steel is. But I didn't feel like switching out the blade, so I went straight to the grinder afterwards. And my 36 grit belt did quick work of everything. But I mean, when I can, I would rather not use the belt and just cut it off. And now we take it to the surface grinder. I'm trying to take off all that extra material I had, and at the same time I want to give it a nice clean surface finish so I can keep working on it. Alright, so I've got a surface ground down to 36, and I did a quick edge, and it's looking pretty cool, but if you can really tell, my core is basically on the edge over here, and I got a lot of steel this way. So yeah, the rest of the core looks pretty good. This side's the side I'm worried about. So the rest looks fairly centered. I don't really want to surface grind anymore to the side. So I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do there. But for now, I'm going to grind in some bevels and see how bad it is. Maybe, yeah, right around here. So where it takes that curve that way and doesn't look like too much of it is. So hopefully we can do something about that, but I'll figure it out as I keep going. So far it's looking pretty cool. So I got it ground and it's looking pretty good here. I got a tiny bit of crossover right here towards the point, but I can fix that. And I believe I have a tiny bit of crossover here, maybe not. But overall it's looking pretty good. I just got to bring this edge all the way this way, and I'm gonna have uneven sides, but as long as all of it is core steel. The steel I'm using in here is good knife steel, the powder steel, but the lock washers that I use for the pattern, they're medium steel, so they're not quite as good as the powder. That's why I went with a core steel. So hopefully none of that is on the edge, but we won't know until we find out. Last thing I got to do is stamp it with my stamp. I forgot to do that. So hopefully nothing warps too bad and I can straighten it out before heat treat. Here I ended up stamping this guy a little bit deeper than I normally would, but it came out pretty nice. And onto our quench and temper. Now that the knife is tempered, I'm just going to clean off all the oil and residue that was left on. And so we have a nice clean working surface. And I'm going to finish grinding in my bevels all the way to the spine of the knife. Alright, so I've been dipping in muriatic acid as I go, and you can see on this side the core is completely exposed. And this side over here, got a little spots here and there, but the majority of the core is exposed, so I think I'm pretty good. I'm gonna keep going up in grits. I'm currently at 120 and I'm gonna go up to 220 now, and I think we'll be good. The entirety of the edge is going to be coarse steel, so pretty sure we're safe now. So let's hit 220. And now it's time to move on to our handle. Here I'm using a paper micarta, and it's a chocolate brown maple that I got from mazercraftsupply.com. I ended up actually picking up at Blade Show. I got a couple of these and I like to use them from time to time. And they have a really pretty pattern once I grind into it. So they're pretty good. I definitely recommend picking up some. And now I'm grinding my scales pretty close up to my final dimensions. Alright, so we got the handle roughed in. Everything's looking pretty good. It's time to hand sand and get everything rough finished. That way we can etch and glue up. And we hand sand. Now it's time to glue up my handle. Now the reason why I'm gluing up my handle before my etch is because I want to etch it with the handle on. Since this is paper micarta and it's pretty dark, neither the coffee nor the ferric chloride actually tinted or changed the color in any way. So I like to do my glue up before I etch it. That way I get a nice clean etch all the way around the spine, and I have a nice flush handle at the same time. If by any chance I was using a wood or even a stabilized wood, I would not go this method. I'd have to go a different route. But whenever I'm using paper micarta, especially a darker paper micarta, I like to use this method because it's just easier and quick. And here I'm just grinding up all the way flush with the knife and starting to contour and shape my handle. A lot of the shaping happens here. A lot of the rough shaping happens here. Afterwards, it's all just sandpaper and a lot of hand sanding. I would like to say now it's for the moment of truth, but I've actually etched this guy a couple times throughout the process, so we already know roughly what it's going to look like. The coffee is the one that's going to do the biggest change to it. And while we're waiting on that, I would like to ask you guys to subscribe. Oh crap, the knife is out. Well, regardless, I would like to ask you guys to subscribe if you're not already subscribed, because I mean you're watching it so you like the video, so you should subscribe. And here I'm just going to sharpen the knife, get it ready for our standard paper cut test. And she's pretty sharp, so I consider that a success. And now that the knife is done, here is a final look. It's pretty much midnight or 1 in the morning. I like to take pictures during the day with natural sunlight, so we're just going to get a final look at it here on camera. If you want to see better pictures of it, be sure to go into the description down below and follow me on my social media. I would really appreciate the support if you guys did. And as always, thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.